Hey you guys, today I'm so excited. I'm going to show you how to make patterned plywood like this. Isn't that cool? This is going to be the lid of a box and I am super happy with the way it turned out. So I'm going to show you how to make this today. Also, I'm going to show you one more design. So we'll do this one and one more. So again, this is the design we'll be making today. Without any further ado, let's get right into it and show you how we'll do it. So in order to create this pattern over here, I will need my Baltic birch plywood. I recommend you use Baltic birch because it has less voids, so you will get a prettier panel. So this is the piece I am going to use. And I already cut a 45 degrees on one side. Now I'm going to cut another 45 degrees on the other side. And the reason I'm doing that is because I don't want to have to keep moving my blade from 45 to 90 and so on. Because I need two strips, I'll do one on this side and one on this side. So I already cut one 45. Now I'm just going to cut another 45 on this edge. So I will do that right now. All right, so I made my two 45-degree cuts. As you can see, one on that side, one on this side, because I need two of these strips. Now the next cut, it's going to be a straight 90-degree cut. We'll cut it somewhere over here. So let me show you something. Now, if we look at this pattern, you can see this pattern is made from squares. Every square has two pieces of Baltic birch plywood that are joined together at 45 degrees, and then it has a square of walnut in this case. The next cut that we'll be doing at the table saw, it's going to determine how big of a square we were going to have. And the way this works is when we make our next cut, we'll do a straight cut at 90 degrees with the table saw blade. So it's going to go right up and down. And the distance between this corner to my mark, that's going to be the size of the square we will need to put in. So it doesn't matter exactly where you put this mark because you will have a piece for the square. You do not want to cut right here where the corner ends because then you will have no square. I hope that makes sense. So in my case, I'm just going to make somewhere over there a cut. And in order to make sure that this edge doesn't slide on the bottom, like underneath my fence, I'm going to run it on the table saw like this. So then this edge references on my fence. And then I make sure I set the blade so it goes somewhere in there. Then without moving my fence, because I want to make sure these two pieces are going to be exactly the same size, without moving the fence, I'm going to turn the board around and cut the other side as well. So I'm going to do that and I'll see you afterwards. So we have two pieces of Baltic birch plywood, and now if I put together the 45-degree angles like this, do you see what's happening? Now we have this shape with a gap in the middle for us to add our square. So that's what it's looking like. To add a square for this one, I'll be using walnut, and I didn't even cut it into a square. It's basically a rectangle. And this one, it's going to get glued right there into place. And the reason I don't care to be perfectly square is because I have a flat reference edge over here and one here, and this is going to end up a square. So after the glue is dry, I can take it to the table saw, run over the fence on this side, and trim this flash over here. Then I can move it like this, run this against the table saw, and trim this side flush and make sure I get the perfect square. So that's how I will do this square for this pattern. Now for the glue up, I will show you how I will glue it up. Let's go to the bench and then I'll show you the second pattern, what you can do with plywood. Now for the glue up, I'm going to hold my piece just the way it goes, like this. Hold it tightly and make sure these two edges meet perfectly between the plywood. I am not worried about my walnut piece now. I'm just holding it in place just so it keeps these pieces from shifting. And then I'll take some pieces of blue tape and tape it to one of the plywood pieces and then pull and tape it to the next one, just to stretch it and act like a clamp. So I'm gonna keep doing that. I'm gonna put a few of them. I really want this to stay tight. So moving on. Make sure your piece meets perfectly. All right. So then after this blue tape, what you should have is something like this that is held together by this blue tape. So now we can lay it on the bench like this, put the glue in, and that's what I'm going to do. I am going to use a Tide Bond 3, and I will need a brush for this, and putting a generous amount of glue, since this is end grain, it's gonna soak it in a little bit, but also you don't want to make a giant mess. And yes, I am working straight on my bench. I could have protected my bench with something, but this is why I built my bench out of cheap plywood, because if it gets completely destroyed, I don't care, and I can also replace the top as often as I need. All right, spreading in some glue. I need something to rest my brush on. All right, squeezing these two pieces together, just like that. We got a good amount of squeeze out on the inside, and now I'm going to add a little bit more glue to the inside channel. Take the brush, spread it around. Now I take my piece of walnut, press it in there. I'm gonna take one of these crocodile wipes. I love these things for the shop. They never dry. They are really large, the perfect amount of moisture. So this is how big they are. And I'm going to kind of wipe off the squeeze out. I don't care too much about squeeze out. As I said, I can clean it afterwards on the table saw when I will trim off that walnut. So this is our blank. And this is what it looks like at the end. And now you can either use packing tape and keep packing it to act as a clamp, or you can use rubber bands. I'm gonna use some of these super thick rubber bands that I like to use when I make boxes to hold my boxes in place. So I'm gonna put the thick rubber bands on the ends, and then I'm gonna use tape for the middle. This walnut piece that is too long is kind of giving me trouble, as I can't wrap the rubber band around it. All right, so that's not gonna work very well. All right, and then, like I said, packing tape. I'm just gonna use blue tape to clamp it, but packing tape, it's stronger. I'm pulling on it as I clamp it. Now, of course, you can also use regular clamps and make sure everything stay tight so you get a nice clean glue up. So that's the first part of this. Now let's just pretend we've done all of that. Our blank is dry. And let's see, I have one in here that I already done. Where is it? There you go. This is what it should look like when it's all done. As you can see, the square is tiny on this one. And this is not just for plywood. I cut these pieces over here. This is rosewood and maple. And I'm going to put some wenge for this one in the corner. And that should be really cool, just working with hardwoods. So super, super neat. But today we're focusing on plywood. So now we have this piece. It's time to go cut it into slices like this, and then we have to glue it up. So I'm going to go cut it on my miter saw. You can use this on the table saw. You can cut them however you please. And because I want to make a lid of a box, kind of like I did this one, it will be very hard to clamp if it's thin like this, because there's no way to get your clamps around it. So what I'll be doing, I'll be cutting these guys thicker, so big chunks like this. So I'll be cutting this into big chunks, and then we will be back at the bench to see how we glue up. All right, so we are at the glue up portion, and here's my pieces. I cut them about this tall, and I will tell you in a second why I cut them that tall. But first, let's talk about this little jig. This is a piece of melamine I bought online. It's some shelving melamine, and I cut a rectangle out of it, and then I put two fences on it. These fences are exactly at 90 degrees to each other, so it makes a perfect square corner here. And I chose melamine because glue does not stick to melamine. Also, once I built the jig, I used some of the Sawdust and Splinter butterboard to wax it, just to really ensure that nothing will stick to it. Now, because glue doesn't stick to melamine, the way I put this together is I use 2-part epoxy, 5 minutes epoxy. I mix these two together, and then I spread it on just like wood glue, and also screw it from the bottom. That's the way I attach these fences, and that way they are very sturdy and stay in place, so I can clamp against it and they will not shift. So dry fitting. The first thing I need to do is dry fit my design. So let me bring you in on this other side. I hope you can see that. And this is a very small piece I'm working with because it's just for demonstration purposes. But the reason why I cut this guy so tall is because if you're working with something really thin, like, let's see, like these guys over here, then it's almost impossible to clamp them because the clamping block, it's going to move and you can't apply pressure on it. So my trick is to cut it thicker, glue it together, and then take it to the bandsaw and resaw it. So out of this tiny piece, I can resaw it maybe 3 times and make 3 pieces out of it. I resaw it 2 times and get 3 pieces out of it, and then glue those pieces together, because it will be a lot easier to glue those on some parallel clamps than dealing with these tiny, tiny cubes. So the way I arranged this pattern is I put these cubes, dry fit them. Every one of them has the walnut square pointing onto the right top. And then the row above it, every walnut goes on the left bottom. So you see when they meet now, they meet and they make this really cool design. And this is what I did for this blank over here. You see, that's exactly the pattern we have going. So to glue this up, I know that this is the design I'm working with. I will have to put glue and then glue them right here inside my jig. And then once I put the glue and I have it in the jig, then I'll use my blocks and really clamp it against the walls of the jig. So that's the way I'll be gluing my piece. And I don't know if you can see it. Let me see if I can move the camera lower. You can see this is going to give us a really tight fitting, no gaps on our design. And it should be really easy to clamp it because we only have to worry about two sides because the other two are in place. So that's the way you glue up this design. Now let's talk about another design, and that is a design made with this hexagons plywood. So as you can see, this is going to give us a completely different look. And then I will show you how to cut these guys. So I don't know if you can tell on the camera or not, but this is the design you're gonna end up with the plywood from this one. And that is the same design I use for my hardwood to make these trivets. It's just diamond shapes. I also made this, which is a lid of a box. And if we look at the blank that I cut these pieces from, you can see it's just 3 diamonds, Baltic birch plywood, 3 diamonds that are glued together into a rod. So those diamonds, when they're glued together, they are like into a big rod like this. This is another one that I have. So now I'm going to show you how you cut this. Now, to cut those diamond-shaped rods from your plywood, the first thing you need to do is take a blank of plywood and make a cut. Set your table saw blade at exactly 60 degrees. So you will set your table saw at 60 degrees and then you make one cut. Now, if you look at a diamond shape, as you can see here, it's made from 4 sides, and all 4 sides has to be exactly equal in length. Otherwise, it's not going to be a diamond shape. Now, 2 of the sides, if I hold it like this, you will see 2 of the sides are determined by the width of your material. So in our case here, it's our 3/4 inch material. So you'll get 2 sides from that. And then the other 2 sides, these 2 sides over here, are going to be the distance between your table saw fence and the blade. So once you make your first cut with your blade at exactly 60 degrees, let me show you the table saw over here. Right now my table is not set at 60 degrees, it's just set at 90 because I'm not going to make these cuts, I'm just going to show you. So once you have your first cut, you take your stock and you put this cut that is in an angle on the table flat like this, and then you butt it against your blade. The blade, of course, will be tilted, so you want to make sure that the stock material and the blade, they're sitting flush on each other, and they should be completely flush and also flush with the table. Then you take your fence and you move it until it touches your material, lock it in place, and that should give you roughly exactly the distance that is from here to here. That distance should be between your blade and your fence. So once you have this cut, then you will make your next cut with you put the edge, the pointy edge of your stock, you put it against the fence and you run it again, and you end up with 2 parallel cuts, and that's how you end up with a diamond like this one over here. And once you make that cut, you need 3 of these sticks that are made with the 2 cuts that are, you see, parallel to each other. Make sure all those 4 sides are equal, measure with a caliper, and then once you have 3 of these sticks, then you can glue them together like this. And what you're looking for a tight joint that has no gaps in it. So this is how we make these hexagon pieces. And this one is made with plywood, but you can see this one is made with maple, walnut, and wenge. So you can get these cube looking things. This is the ones that I cut for this lid over here. And then you slice these guys and glue them on our gluing jig, just like I showed you with the little squares. And then, after your glue cubes are all dry, you can resaw them and glue it together, and you will end up with something like this. I hope this was helpful to you and you learned something new. Thank you so much for watching. My name is Skylar Ewing, and I'll see you in my next video.